Okay, Dr. Henderson, do you want to start us off?
Good morning. I'm Mark Henderson. I'm the Associate Dean for Admissions at UC Davis here in Sacramento, or 18 miles from here.
My name is Dr. Kevin Watt. I'm the Assistant Dean in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion at Wright State University Boonshoff School of Medicine in Dayton, Ohio.
Dr. Richard Wiseman. I'm Associate Dean for Admissions at University of Miami Miller School of Medicine in Miami, Florida.
I'm Kathy Huebner. I'm the Director of Admissions at the University of Iowa Carver College of Medicine.
Hi, I'm Laura Wexler. I'm Senior Associate Dean of Student Affairs and Admissions at the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine. That's in Ohio. I'm also a cardiologist at the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Cincinnati.
Good morning. I'm John Densmore. I'm Associate Dean for Admissions and Student Affairs at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Good morning. I'm Captain Margaret Calloway, Associate Dean for Recruitment and Admissions at the Uniformed Services University School of Medicine, as well as I'm an infectious disease specialist at the National Naval Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland.
Okay. We'll start it off with a question about the application process for medical school. What is the most important quality or extracurricular activity that you look for in your applicants? Let's start it off with Dr. Henderson.
Okay. I think that, we look for many qualities, but so I don't know that I could select one. I think the main one for us really has to do with the potential to be a good physician. So we tend to look for experiences that we think predict that outcome. So clinical experiences are weighed heavily, but they're not absolutely required. But again, I think it's the things that we think predict a good physician, physician-like behaviors. That would be the most important for us.
I look for a well-rounded sort of students that really have done some things in their career, whether it be health-related or not, that show some human or humanistic characteristics, and I think in general that's what we look for throughout our admissions process, that people that have some humanistic qualities besides the other academic things that we should be going, that we know that you should have.
In addition to being well-rounded, we like to look for applicants that are already demonstrating a passion for medicine. Through their clinical experiences and the amount of energy and opportunities that they've already had, they've already shown that they've really loved medicine and that they want to make a career out of it.
In addition to everything they just said, the Carver College of Medicine also does a survey of our faculty every 3 years, and we ask them what qualities they think are most important in our applicants. And for the last 10 years, the answer has been moral character. So that's not something we can look at your application and just check off based on an experience that you might have had. But it's an overall picture of who you are as a person and your interest and passion in medicine.
There's no specific requirement that we look at for what a student has done. I think this is a misimpression. We don't require that you volunteer in an emergency room. Basically, we're looking for two things. One is, do you actually know what you're getting into? Do you have a love of the life? Do you like being around sick people? And are you energized, impassioned, and thoughtful about going into a career of medicine? And the other thing is, are you inclined by what you've done in your life today towards a life of service? Because there are other ways to work, there are other kinds of meaningful work in this life, but a physician must be intrinsically inclined towards a life of serving others, and we're looking for some evidence that that's what drives you as a student.
Yeah, I would agree. All the good answers are being taken. I think in addition to those things, we look for people who have shown evidence of working well in groups or in teams. As medicine's becoming more and more of a sort of a team-based practice, I think that is important. And then we also really value our interview. We look for people who, are the kind of person you'd want to be your doctor, somebody who can listen but can also speak, to their passions and really show you that they've got all those other characteristics.
At the Uniformed Services University, we're looking for someone that has an interest in serving in the service and serving the troops that may be coming back with injuries that normally wouldn't be seen in the regular population, and serving the families of those that are out there protecting our nation. We're also looking for someone that has that knows exactly what they are getting into. They've actually gone out and done some work in the medical field and have a very good idea of what they're going to be doing as a physician. They have the passion for caring for people, and they have the passion for caring for military folks. And we're truly looking for those that are willing to serve and to serve our nation.
Kind of going off of that, is research experience essential in order to get into medical school? Dr. Calloway?
At our facility, research is something that we take good pride in, having opportunities for our students to be able to continue in that field if they want to go into it. We do have an MD, PhD program, and so those options are available, but it's not required for our program. We are looking for clinicians as a priority, and so having research on your application is an added bonus, but it's not a requirement.
Certainly at the University of Virginia, we look at it the same way. We really value clinical experience, and really that would like to see that in an application. If research is there, it's a bonus, but it's certainly not a negative if it's not there.
University of Cincinnati is a research-based academic health center like many of those represented here, and we certainly look at a student's research experience as evidence of their scholarly inclinations and their interest in learning to be a rigorous scientist. However, we are more interested in that as well as other evidence of some particular passion for clinical science, and research activity is certainly not a requirement. In fact, if you cite research experience on an application with the expectation that that in and of itself is a good thing, I would forewarn you that you better be able to discuss with a certain amount of enthusiasm what you did and why you did it and what the implications were, because that's what we're really interested in. So the answer is no, it's certainly not a requirement, but it is one way, if that is something you're really interested in, to demonstrate your devotion and dedication to learning to be a clinical scientist, which is what, to some extent, every physician is.
At the University of Iowa, we do not have a requirement that you participate in research in advance of medical school. We are the largest teaching hospital in the country, so we do have a lot of research and teaching and service going on, and our dean has asked us to find applicants that can meet our mission from a variety of different ways. So we do look at research as an option for how students have learned about medicine, but it is not required. We do have a research program that's available for our students. About 100 students do summer research between their first and second year from an NIH grant that we've had for over 30 years. So if you have no research in your background, you can participate in that program. If you have lots of research in your background, you can also participate in that program. So we are looking for people with all different kinds of experiences.
At the University of Miami, we're looking for individuals that have had some research experience, but even more important than the research experience are the characteristics of those people that we want to see. We love to have individuals that are already critical thinkers. We love to have people that have the ability to critically review the literature. And we like to have people that have the ability to be problem solvers. And all of those are traits that are usually developed through research, so that in the absence of research, we like to have the applicants be able to show that they are problem solvers and critical thinkers.
At Wright State, I think we all are researchers to some degree, as we are problem solvers in solving cases of our patients. However, I think it's more important, at least in my application process, that if you are doing research, you are doing it with some reason. You are not just doing it to check the box on the list of things to do as an applicant, to shadow check, to do some research check. And if you're doing it for a reason, and I think that's the important part, you've got to do something that you have passion for. If you're just there, it doesn't really serve you, and it's basically a waste of your time, at least in my opinion. However, if you're going to do research, it needs to be focused. It needs to be focused so that you're getting something out of it, and so that when you do show up to the interview and you have written that on the application, you're able to discuss it intelligently, even though you may not be talking to somebody that understands 100% of what you're doing.
At UC Davis, research is not required, although as echoed by the other comments, I think a lot of the qualities that go with being a good research scientist are what we're looking for. I guess I would say that you want to make your activities, to me, it doesn't matter if you have 15 superficial activities. What really matters is if you immerse yourself in one of those. And if one of those pursuits has been research, then I think it can really help you. But again, we're looking for depth of experience and evidence of commitment, because medicine's it's a long road. You know, it's a marathon, as someone said earlier. So it requires really evidence of long-term commitment and deep passion for it.
Okay, thank you. This is a good question we got from one of our students, and I want to address it to Dr. Wexler. Is there a way for prospective medical students to get a taste for what medical school is like before applying?
Do you mean specifically at University of Cincinnati or in general?
Either or.
I guess the answer to that is yes and no. I don't think you can really feel what it's like until and unless you're in it. And having said that, I think that it is very important, if you don't have firsthand knowledge of what medical school is like, to talk with or visit with a medical student and spend some time with them, because I think what incoming medical students sometimes have trouble getting is just how much volume of information there is. And I don't think any particular course in medical school is harder than the hardest advanced science course I took in college. Nothing in medical school was harder than physical chemistry. And yet, what makes medical school so different is the volume and the pace of the information that comes at you, coupled with the other training that you get, which is how to walk into a room with a patient who is a stranger and who may be distressed, distrustful, or in pain, and instantly establish the rapport that makes you credible as a physician. And that training process, which is one of the most exciting parts of medical school, is the other part of your day. So putting those two together, it's a very, very heavy day, and a lot is going on, and you make an enormous sacrifice of the rest of your life while you are going through this process. That's what makes it so exciting, as well as so stressful. So it's kind of hard to actually feel that, but you can certainly see what the pace of the day is. And I think the more information you get firsthand by visiting with a medical student firsthand, not by watching television, but by actually visiting a medical student. We certainly welcome visitors to shadow with our medical students.
Does anyone else have anything to add about that? Okay.
I guess I could add one thing. I think that, you know, depending on where you are, UC Davis, we have a network of student-run clinics that really, the care in those clinics is provided not only by medical students and residents and our faculty, but actually undergraduate students. So I think those, if there are opportunities wherever you are to be working alongside with or shadowing, as Dr. Wexler said, medical students in a clinical setting, that can give you a little bit of a window, not to the volume that she alluded to, because that's, I think, difficult to simulate. But those clinical aspects opportunities are available in some medical schools.
And another question is there room to have a family and children in medical school if you would so choose to do that and still be successful? Or should you choose to wait and have children after? And I could address that to Dr. Callaway. Would you like to?
At our program, we have typically, over the 4 years of medical school, over 50 babies born over the 4-year class. And our school is very family-oriented. They have a spousal association that is very supportive of the students that are within the school. And we've even had, in this first-year class, a student that's delivered a baby within the first semester and is back on track with her regular studies and continuing because the administration is very supportive of family. There's a daycare on campus, and the students have the option of utilizing it as part of their daycare services as well as any of the spousal associations' assistance as well. So it's up to the individual to make the decision of when it's right for them to have a family. And for these students, the timing was right. And because our students don't pay for medical school, we don't charge tuition, and they are getting a salary, they have opportunities to be able to hire nannies or in-home assistants to help support having a child in the household if there's a two-family adults that are working full-time, and it doesn't have such a major hassle of being able to financially support that child as it comes in. Because remember, when you have a child, it starts with, you're going to have them for the next 18 years, and so you have to plan for that. And it's just not, something that you do on the whim. Sometimes it just happens and you don't have control over it, but you need to sometimes plan for these things. And each individual needs to plan for it in their own way. But our school is very supportive of what your plans are and are willing to help and make sure that your academics, whether you need to have an extended program or if you continue within the same program and need to just make up exams along the way, it's available. We had one student that had 3 babies while in medical school that just graduated. So there are many different ways that people do it. In her situation, her husband was a stay-home dad, and so they were able to make it work. So
I would, 3 babies is a lot. Congratulations to that student. I think you can do whatever you set your mind to. I really, truly believe that. My wife had our first child, but as I was ending my 2nd year of medical school, getting ready to study for the national board exams, while she was a 3rd-year law student, and we really weren't sure how we were going to do it, but we made it through. And it's only because we had some determination, and we didn't have family support because we were in Ohio, and we were not from there, but we had a medical student support. And so the students supported us through that, to the fact that some of my classmates gave my wife a baby shower, which they didn't have to do. So I think it's just about having a good support system. So for those who are thinking of that and contemplating, when to do it and when not to do it and all that, I just think you have to know yourself and know your support system, and it can be accomplished.
I guess I would add, it is possible. My wife is a physician. We had our first baby when she was a 4th-year medical student, and I was an intern. So a terrible time to have kids, I think. Terrible planning. I think what it took nothing in life is free, in medicine or in any other pursuit where you want to excel. So I think you have to give up something to get something. And so we made a decision at that point that she would take some time off from medical school. I mean, it all worked out in the end, but I would say that you have to realize that you have to sacrifice something to get to have a baby, to be a great physician, to be able to do well in medical school. You can't really have it all. So I think it's possible. It just requires a lot of persistence, and I think in our case we gave up sleep, frankly. That's one thing. And, you know, both of us were residents at the time we had a small child. I mean, but our program let us be on call on different nights. And so, again, that may seem harsh. We never saw each other, but we did see our daughter. So I think it's possible, but, again, it's not going to be easy. I just don't want to make it sound sugar-coated too much.
Medical school is all about time management. And what that does is it just puts another variable into the equation for how much time you're going to have for your studies, how much time you're going to be able to have for your partner, how much time you're going to have for your family. So that what happens is that there are people that it works very well for, and there are other people that it really pushes them very close to the edge, where it creates challenges that place obstacles in their ability to be successful. So it is very individual, and it has a lot to do with how well you're able to manage time, because that's really what medical school is all about.
Along those lines, we really feel like the best physicians are people who have good balance in their lives, and we feel like medical school is the best time to establish that, not waiting until you're a resident or out in practice, because the pressures just get more and more, including families and other things. And I think, like the other speakers said, you know, the timing of it is always going to be difficult. You know, if you're a medical student or an intern or a first-year fellow, it's never going to be perfect. So I think the planning really is the key, but it certainly can be done.
Thank you. Next question, I'd like to just go down the row and everybody can answer. What is the best way to prepare for the medical school interview, and what are the criteria that the medical school committees look for when they are administering the interview?
I'll go ahead and start. When you're preparing for the interview, one of the things that you want to do is to pretty much research the school in advance that you're going to be applying to and that you're going to be interviewing at. Knowing something about the history of the program, knowing something about the academic program in advance, if questions come up about that during the interview, you can very comfortably be able to answer those questions. Knowing why you want to go into medicine. You know, that question is typically asked, what got you into thinking about going into medicine? If you're not well-grounded and you've done your personal statement, you've put stuff in there, but you really haven't really read it before you come for the interview, the interviewer will pick up on things that you have an uncertainty about. And so you need to have reviewed your personal statements, any secondary material that you've sent in to the committee. Make sure you are very well versed on what's in that material. If you've done research, make sure you know about your research. You know in depth who you're working with and what's been published on it, and about the basic sciences of the research, because those questions will come up about your research. If you really were someone that was in there just pipetting dosages of the drugs, and that's all you did in the participation of the research, then make sure that that's what you put on your application, and not that you actually were doing the actual bench work of and the science of writing that paper, because it will come out in the end. One of the key things is make sure that you're very honest when you're speaking to the interviewer about anything that may be in your application as far as institutional actions and other things and stuff like that. Those are things that really sometimes will, if it wasn't disclosed and then you talk about it, or it was disclosed and you don't want to talk about it, the interviewer will get the impression that you're hiding something, and then they may want to pass over on you and move to the next applicant. But I think a lot of the things that you need to look at when preparing for the interview is, again, being professional. You know, come in the business suit, come professionally with your haircut, or hair up, and no flashy clothes and stuff like that. Those are some of the things that I think are important for someone that's preparing for an interview.
I would certainly agree with that. I think one of the other things to keep in mind is that everybody you're interacting with is potentially evaluating you as well. So whether it's the secretary when you first walk in, the students who may take you on a tour, be respectful to everybody. I think there's nothing that, you know, turns us off more than if one of our secretaries says somebody was very disrespectful or, you know, did something that slighted them. One of the other things that our committee likes to ask is to have people describe a clinical encounter that really meant something to them and maybe sort of affected them as they were looking into going into medical school. And in sitting on our admissions committee meetings, one of the worst things is if somebody can't come up with something. They've done a lot of shadowing, and they just sort of stammer through that, and you just get a sense that there isn't any real passion. So it may be there, but I think our committee sometimes catches on that. So think through the things that you've seen and what has really you know, gotten you excited about medicine, and be prepared to talk about that.
Well, this may be come across as either scary or reassuring, but you can't prepare for our interview. A couple of years ago, we radically changed our interview process to adopt a system which is used largely in Canada, but which is now being adopted by a number of schools in the country, called the multiple mini interview. And we abandoned the idea of having a single lengthy interview with one faculty member to a system of scenario-based discussions in which students have a short period of time to review a very brief scenario, not about medicine per se, but about any kind of human interactions, a situation, and then they go into a room with an interviewer to discuss the scenario. These scenarios specifically don't have a right or wrong answer. We're interested in how you think, how you communicate. Can you see both sides of a situation? Are you interested in human situations? And you go through brief interactions like this, about 10 minutes apiece, and you do 7 or 8 of them. The interviewers also are perhaps not what you would expect. A third of the interviewers are the standard admissions interviewers, faculty from both basic science and clinical components of the academic health center. A third of the interviewers are senior medical students, and a third of the interviewers are community members. They may be retired physicians, they may be HR people, nursing administrators, volunteers who are mature and have what you might just call street smarts about how people interact with others and who have just good people skills judgment. So that's our interview process. I think students have been very enthusiastic about it. It's interesting. It's not something that you feel you have to do your homework for. And I believe what it's doing for us is giving us information about how you think on your feet, which is one of the things that, of course, you have to be able to do as a physician. So that's our interview process. If there are things on your application which require further explanation, you will be contacted for a more traditional one-on-one interview, and that would include any little peccadillos or institutional action. We do take a broad view, and we try to get an explanation for anything that you put on there. But, and again, I would echo the previous speaker that you must be very, very honest about anything that has happened to you, because the kiss of death is dishonesty or obfuscation of anything in your record. But anyway, that's our interview process. It's called the multiple mini interview process, and I think you probably may start seeing that more and more because we've gotten a lot of interest from other schools about it.
The University of Iowa has an interesting interview process, and there are a lot of comments about it on studentdoctor.net. So if you are one of the people that looks at that particular website, be careful not to look at the questions that other interviewees have written down, because you may find that the question is worded differently than the answer you've practiced. And we've had people get caught up in those things. So our interviewers are not on our admissions committee. They have closed files. They don't have any access to your application. They're not going to ask you about any institutional actions. Those are going to come through on our secondaries, and I'm the person that will be looking at those. During our interview day, we have a lot of people come in and talk to you about the school, so you do get a pretty good idea of what programs we offer. You get to meet medical students in advance. And then the interview is with 2 faculty members in basic science or clinical areas who have volunteered to be part of our interview process. That means that they want to be there. And they introduce themselves, they'll talk to you for a little while. You can tell them something interesting about yourself, but then they're going to go into something called a structured interview. And our admissions committee has come up with questions they would like answers to, and they will ask you the questions and you answer them, and our interviewers will nod and they'll smile at you, but they're not going to engage you in more conversation. So it's going to be more like a presentation of your answer. But that's only for 3 questions. And then when you're done with those, they go on to just a regular, unstructured, give and take, answer questions, ask you additional questions. And we don't have a weight as part of our interview scores. We do get comments from our faculty as they finish up each day. And that means that my secretary and I get to read paragraphs of doctors' writing for hours the next day, which is a little bit challenging. And then part of the rest of the interview day is case-based learning. That's part of our curriculum, and you have a session where you get to interact with the other applicants and a 4th-year medical student who's facilitating the case-based learning. People are suspicious that we are looking for medical knowledge in the case-based learning, but our medical students don't know anything on their first day of medical school either. So it's just a way to see how you interact in a group, but also to find out how our curriculum works and get the chance to talk to a 4th-year medical student. And again, those are just comments that we get back from our medical students who've been trained to do this case-based learning facilitation. So there are a number of things that go into our interview day, and the University of Iowa is notoriously nice. That's what people will describe us as. So you will have a good day when you come, and we do have students that can house you when you come for your interview. That's a great way to meet the medical students and get some interaction with them in advance of your interview as well.
The University of Miami, preparing for the interview is not particularly easy to do. One of the things that we are looking for are communication skills among the applicants. And what we're looking for are people that can express themselves in a clear, concise, and organized fashion. And that's one of the major evaluation points, because clearly one of the major jobs that a physician is going to have is being able to be an effective communicator with their patients. The second thing is that we're using a technique called behavioral interviews, which is based on the premise that previous performance, previous behavior is going to predict future behavior and future performance. So we will use scenarios where we'll place the applicant in a particular situation, tell them a little story about what has happened, and ask them how they would respond to it. And what it does is it allows them to delve into a topic that they're probably familiar with and exercise judgment or not exercise judgment. And that allows us to get a very good feel for how a person's going to do when placed in some of the difficult situations that physicians and medical students can find themselves in.
I think the thing that you can do to prepare just in general for interviews are to know your AMCAS application backwards and forwards, having had to review it many times. You might think you know it. Try to pick out some of those things that you that you can highlight, things that you think somebody's going to pick up on as a negative, and have a reasonable, thought out explanation. I don't think you want to give any sort of canned answers, because we can pick those things out. Student doctor network is, that's what's going on. But I think one way you can also, what you should be doing is, if you know students at those institutions, you should be contacting students. And if you don't, you should ask the Student Affairs Office to get you in contact with some students to get an idea of what's really going on at the facility, so that you do have some reasonable questions to ask. Most of our websites are very up to date and have most of the answers to the questions that you want to ask. So you show up in an interview and you don't have a whole lot of questions to ask, but you need to be able to formulate some things to be able to get across. But I think that one good way to do that is to talk to the students.
At UC Davis, we're actually also using the multiple mini interviews that the University of Cincinnati started using a couple of years ago. So I think it's difficult to prepare for those. I think what we try to do is emphasize what was mentioned earlier, communication skills. That's the thing that all physicians need. It's the thing that all scientists need, and the ability to work in teams. Again, I believe all scientists need that, all physicians need that. So that's really what we're looking for, the ability to work with others and the ability to communicate. So I just don't think it's possible to practice those things. I think you have them. Many people have them in the activities you do, and the experiences you've had may help you to be a better communicator, but it's explicit. I mean, specifically to prepare would be difficult. We have an explanation on our website about how it works, and we try to give as much information as we can to put people at ease, because it is kind of a new methodology, although, as was mentioned, it's been used in Canada for many, many years. And in many respects, it tends to predict physician behaviors more than some of the traditional things we use to size up applicants, at least from preliminary data.
Thank you. Dr. Wexler, one thing you mentioned brought up the idea of honesty in the application process. And there's a recent survey that said that most med school admissions officers have seen dishonesty in the AMCAS application. And we got a question from one of our viewers online that wanted to follow up with that. So, for example, how do you verify honesty in the application? And also, what are the consequences if you determine that there was dishonesty in the application in regards to experiences or background?
I don't want to leave the impression that we find dishonesty in most applications. I think most admissions officers have had the experience, fortunately extremely rare, of uncovering dishonesty. And I would say, in my experience, it is very rare. And it often has to do with how a student handles some either something like a DUI, a citation for underage drinking, or some kind of adverse institutional action or legal action. Students who have had the experience of being cited for some kind of legal action, and sadly it often has to do with alcohol, are told by their lawyers that it's been expunged. And they assume that that happens automatically after a year, and that it sort of disappears as if it never happened. That is absolutely not the case, and if it comes up on the criminal background check that every medical student now must undergo, and you have not addressed that issue on your application, that is evidence that you are not being forthcoming about an adverse action. So that's one experience that I can cite. Now, if you cover up, or you minimize, or you fail to take responsibility for something that you've done, how are we to be confident that this is not a moral failing in your character, and that you would be likely to be dishonest about a prescription that you wrote for a patient? So there really is zero tolerance, and if you cover over something and are not forthcoming, that is, as I said, extremely serious and something that we could not overlook. We have certainly accepted students into medical school who have some experience or did something as a younger student that they learned from, that they made amends for. I can say I was arrested when I was a young student for camping out illegally on the Cape Cod National Seashore in the late 60s, and here I am. I've succeeded, but I certainly don't hide this. So I think that we scrutinize the criminal background check very, very carefully, and any hit, that means anything that comes up, we look at the AMCAS application, and if there's nothing there, that discrepancy will be followed up with very rigorously. And I think that the other thing which has come up on occasion is a student who put a misleading reference on their application, cited themselves as an author on a publication, whereas in fact they were not an author. They were simply acknowledged with gratitude at the end of the paper. Some of that is just misunderstanding, and I think that when you indicate things you have done, things that have been published or presentations that you have given, these are the components of a CV or curriculum vitae, go over it with a professor or a mentor to make sure that you have cited things correctly and that you are not implying academic credit or publication credit which is not correct. So those are really the two kinds of things that I've seen. Fortunately, we haven't had any rogue applicants who have turned out to have falsified their graduation requirements. I think, as I said, most of it has to do, sadly, with underage drinking and drugs, which is one of the scourge of college campuses. You must be absolutely forthright and forthcoming about any citation or experience that you've had.
Let me add to that that was earlier mentioned that you have to be of high moral character. And so we all want to put our best foot forward and do not stretch the AMCAS application, because believe it or not, there are times where I might know somebody at a particular area, and I may call on that person to tell me something about you. And we will do that. In regards to that criminal background check, you have to realize that if you get accepted to medical school beginning in next week, that criminal background check may not be run until springtime. And if you have something that still shows up, you're going to get dinged for it. And that goes beyond the first year of medical school. Nowadays, the hospitals are requiring that as our students enter the third year, they want another criminal background check. So if you've got things going on during your medical school career, you better make them well known to the Student Affairs Office so that there's not any surprises when you're not going to be let into the clinics.
One of the places that I've found issues in the application, and it's always a question, is it's dishonesty or a breakdown in credibility, have to do with timelines, with volunteering experiences, where you look and you find that how could the student have been in 2 different cities at exactly the same time volunteering, where they have perhaps extended the period of time or overestimated the amount of time that they've been in a particular area. So that we look very, very carefully at the timelines on that. We also look very careful for periods of time or years that are completely missing off of the application, where somebody has graduated a year out, or there was a year between their sophomore or junior year in college. We're going to look back and want to find out what you were doing during that period of time and how come there appears to be this missing gap in time. And all of those things really need to be well laid out, and you need to be able to address a very, very good timeline, an accurate timeline of your life.
One of the things that our school does is a security clearance check, and so that extends even further than the criminal background check. And so things that come up on that that the student had not previously disclosed will result in the student not only losing a seat in the class, but there may be also some military judicial issues that may come as a result of it as well. And so we really caution students to make sure that they disclose everything, even if it is something that may have happened prior to the age of 18 and beyond.
Okay, thank you. The next question I'll address to Kathy Heibner. What do you look for particularly in reapplicants? And also, are reapplicants required to submit a whole new batch of letters of recommendation?
We have a lot of reapplicants, and if someone is not admitted to our school, we offer the opportunity to talk with one of 3 of the professionals in the office about your application and what the admissions committee felt needed to be strengthened. If you come in and you talk to one of us, we write up notes, and those notes are available to the admissions committee the next year when you apply. If you follow the instructions that the admissions committee suggests, your application will be looked at much more favorably than if you don't call at all, or if you decided that maybe they weren't right about what you need to fix. So be very careful that we offer this to absolutely every applicant to our school that is not admitted. For recommendations, we do ask that you get updated recommendations. And sometimes that can be hard because you've been out of school for a year at that point. But you will also have been in contact with different people at that point as well. So we would like them updated. They don't necessarily have to be from completely different people. They can certainly be from the same people that you had before. But in a reapplication, we are looking for an improvement. If you retake the MCAT, we'd like to see it go up. And sometimes that's hard. If you have a 9 or a 10 or an 11 in a particular area and you're trying to raise an 8, you have to study for the section where you got the 11 as well as the one where you got the 8 when you retake it. Otherwise, the higher score can go down. So be very careful of that. Make sure that you actually study for the entire MCAT. If your grades need to be improved, we do suggest that applicants look into some of the really wonderful post-bac programs that are available around the country as well.
I mean, I would add for reapplicants, I mean, the bottom line is you need to do something different from what you did before. So, for instance, let's say working at Starbucks for a year or something is probably not going to help you if that's what you do between your first application and your second application. You really ought to be thinking about doing something that will enhance your application. And that's the main factor we look at in terms of reapplicants, is what did this individual do differently, or demonstrate, again, a more sustained commitment on some health-related activity that makes, that overcomes whatever it was that didn't get them over the hump before.
One of the other things that students should also look at is rewriting their personal statements and or their secondary personal statements. If you have a application that didn't get you in the first time, you need to do something that's going to improve it. And a lot of, at our school, we have a letter that goes out to students that are not accepted, and giving them the opportunity to get a formal written review of what their deficiencies were that the committee felt did not allow them to get accepted into medical school the first time. And with that, those students that do adhere to the recommendations that they actually get in writing, most of the things are rewriting the personal statements, retaking the MCAT if that's where the issue is, taking a post-bac program and or a special master's program, whichever issue may help them the best, or whichever situation is available to them. All of those things will make an application look more refreshed the second time it comes through. And as you do that, you get full consideration with applying early and getting all of your information and new letters recommendations, updates on letters recommendations, and early, as opposed to applying late in the cycle. Because a lot of schools are rolling admissions, and so you need to consider that as well. And some of the ones that didn't get in the first time may have been that they were waitlisted, and you know, your next application, even though you're reapplying, don't just rest on your laurels that, okay, I'm going to apply earlier the next year with the same application. They see that same application, and that just is a turnoff to them. And so make sure you do some updates on that packet.
Being a reapplicant implies a few different things, and there are a lot of reasons that people are reapplicants. In this day and age where we're often receiving 5,000 or 6,000 applicants and only have the ability to interview 500, there's a good probability that, at least in some of the schools that you apply to, you're simply not being called for an interview because either your application arrived late or you basically had bad luck and just didn't get into that cut to be able to be interviewed. One of the things that many of the schools offer is the ability for you to speak to either the Dean of Admissions or the Director of Admissions to find out why you did not make the cut the first year, and to find out exactly what they believed or perceived to be the reason for any deficits that might exist. And I would do that, if possible, very early in your reapplication cycle, because you may not fully understand why you did not get accepted the first time, and they may be able to shed a tremendous amount of light into the areas that you may need to improve. And by all means, get your application in as early as you possibly can, because if it's a rolling admission school, come October or November, an awful lot of those interview spots are already going to be taken up, and you may simply have missed the boat because you're a day short and $1 late.
We have time for one last question, so I'd like to ask, we can go down the row and ask everyone. Traditionally, this conference has attracted a lot of non-traditional students. So what would each of you recommend to somebody who has, say, attained a degree in a non-science major and formed a career and decides that they would like to have a career in medicine and go to medical school? So they go and they get the prerequisites and they would like to get into medical school, and they're in the application process. What would you recommend to them?
We welcome those applications. We have typically less than 50% of our applicants that are the traditional biology, biochemistry, and chemistry majors matriculate at our school. We have economics majors, math, history, English, and so it just adds to the diversity of the student, and if they're really committed in doing the academics and the upper division courses and preparing to get their application in and have done all the extracurricular activities in that area, then their application is looked at very favorably at our program as it would any other application. We do have a lot of enlisted members that may have gone to junior college and not done very well, which is why they joined the service early on. And then they found, as they developed in their careers in the service, they've gone on and pretty much gotten their degree on their own and realized working in the service that they may want to go into medicine. And as a result, you know, their undergraduate marks may have not been in the first 2 years that stellar, but as they develop their career, the last 2 years, their marks are right in the 3.6, 3.7 range, and their MCATs are comparable. And we welcome those applications and look at the entire applicant in that respect, regardless of what their major is.
I would agree. We really value quote-unquote non-traditional applicants. I think as we look for a diverse class, and I think all of us are trying to increase diversity in our classes, diversity of experience is really a huge component of that. So people who've had other degrees, had other careers, really bring a lot to the class. I mean, there's certainly a maturity to people who've been out for a few years. Well more than half of our students have taken a year or more off, and we really value that. So I think, if you have sort of well thought out reasons for why you're now switching into medicine, and you've had that other experience, we look at that as a real positive.
We have a sort of a tradition of taking non-traditional students, and the non-traditional aspect of our student population includes people with non-traditional majors. We had a graduate from UCSF in screenwriting. We had a solo violin major from the Cincinnati Conservatory. We have a lot of people with other kinds of majors in addition to a core of science grads. But the other non-traditional aspect of our class are people who have done something else before coming back to medical school. And the reason we like non-traditional students is that they're mature, they've got people skills, and they know exactly why they're in medical school and they really want it. Now, having said that, the one thing that we need to be convinced of is, as I said before, that a non-traditional student really knows what they're getting themselves into. You can't have a job and a career and plan to do medical school in your spare time while you continue to pursue your other career. If you have small children at home, you need to have a plan of how you're going to deal with that. But I must say that most of the older non-traditional students who come to medical school are very focused, and they don't have what I call unfinished business, which is something that we occasionally run into with young students right out of college who've been working so hard to get into medical school that when they finally get to medical school, they have to cope with the fact that now they have to work even harder and they have even less free time. We've certainly had students who took a year between college and medical school to, let's see, the ones I'm thinking of, be a ski bum, be a sports broadcaster, go to South America, work for Teach America. I call that your sort of unfinished business, the thing that you want to get done, that you've always dreamed about and always wanted to do. And we would much rather you get that done. You get that life experience crossed off your agenda before you come to medical school, because it is a sacrifice, and being in medical school is a lot like training for a marathon or training for the Olympics. You eat, sleep, think all about how to maximize and optimize your performance in learning this profession. You're not there for your own edification. You have this incredible moral responsibility to learn as much as you can and as well as you can for the sake of your patients. So it is a huge commitment. And as I said, we are very, very welcoming of mature students who have come back to medicine after having done something else in life.
The average age of our medical student incoming class is 23 and a half. So we typically have people, again, that take that year off in between their first graduation from undergrad and starting medical school. But we have a lot of second career people that come through our application process. And some of them, it might have been many years ago, and they might have a 2.8 GPA in engineering from, in our case, Iowa State University, and have decided after 10 years of work that they now want to go to medical school. Unfortunately, it's that 2.8 that shows up on their AMCAS application. In those cases, they most likely will have taken post-bac courses that I'm able to look at separately from their undergrad GPA. So if there's a long time since the undergrad years that they had, I'll look for either the post-bac or the graduate work that would indicate that the person is ready to deal with medical school and the rigor involved with that. We also look for the story that goes with it. There are people that have amazing stories. We have a number of different things that we look for as far as diversity. It can be geographic, socioeconomic, second career, rising trend, ethnic and race, gender. There's all kinds of stuff that goes into what we're looking for to enhance the educational benefit of the entire class. So we're looking for different people with different backgrounds who can help each other learn and to work with the populations of patients in the future. So second career people, very often it is a good idea to call us and ask us what kinds of things we will be looking for, and just to let us know that you're out there and give us a better opportunity to get to know you.
Most of the time, non-traditional students have a tremendous amount to offer to a medical school class. They bring with them maturity and experience and the ability to add to the culture of the class. Occasionally, though, we'll find the non-traditional student that is not going to be very helpful to us. This individual might have had 5 majors at 6 different universities, and this is their 3rd career change. And when you look at them, they're just not able to find something that they're going to be happy with. And it's a very, very competitive situation for that seat, and we just don't want to give that seat to somebody that really is going to be a professional student, and medicine is just going to be one other stop. They'll do that for 3 more years and then decide to go on to accounting or international business. That's really not the non-traditional student that we're looking for. So finding a person that can bring experience and maturity is one thing. Finding somebody that just can't make up their mind with what they want to do, that's not an advantage to us.
I think that if you've been out of school probably over 4 to 5 years and you particularly hadn't been a science major, that you do yourself a wealth of good to go to a post-bac program. You may have to stop work, leave the family for 1 to 2 years to show, one, yourself that you're ready to commit to it, and two, to show the admissions committees that this is something that you really are wanting to get into. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in you to do this, and if it's something you really want to do, you can't just go take 3 classes at the community college and complete the requirements and say, I'm ready to go to medical school. Beyond that, I think you've got to do some healthcare-related activities, again, to show that this is the career that you are going to choose, because for us to look at you, and I think most of us realize that non-traditional students have a lot to offer. They're really down to business. But you need to show us that in a way that we can put it all in one package. The student left work and went back to school, left their family for whatever period of time, and showed that they have a commitment, the commitment that's required to complete the medical curriculum.
We have many non-traditional students, and I think this relates to one of really the core missions of UC Davis is to serve the community in which we live. And our medical center happens to be located in an extremely diverse community where 1/4 of the patients are foreign-born. There's 7 different languages spoken. And I think that the non-traditional students we tend to take have demonstrated work with diverse or vulnerable communities or have a passion or experience that will allow us to serve that population. So we, as others have said, we value those students. We need them to address many of the health disparities that are present in our local community, which is an extremely diverse community that we serve our patients. So anyway, our average age of entrance is also about 2.5 years, 2 to 2.2 years out of college, the average. So.
Okay, thank you so much for coming. That concludes our second Dean panel.